where is it that you get your self-worth from? Now, I hope it's not from me because I'm a useless, terrible person. Please do not get validation from me. Where we get our self-worth from matters. Often it's coming from outside sources, right? And yet self-worth is really all about how we fundamentally feel about ourselves internally, what we feel we deserve, right? Now, deserving something implies a sense of justice. You've put in some amount of work, and therefore, automatically, you deserve something good to happen for that. But if anybody's ever lived through life, then you probably understand that good people don't always get what they deserve. Bad people don't always get what they deserve. This word deserve, which is tied to self-worth, is not really based on a black and white way of thinking. It's more gray. Things change, things evolve. So how are we valuing ourselves based upon something that isn't so black and white? Meaning, how can we really say to ourselves, I deserve blank X, Y, and Z, when there isn't any real truth to that saying? Meaning we could spend our whole life feeling that we deserve something, whether it's love, money, a career, success, a bigger house, could be anything. And we could spend our whole life doing that, spending all this time, and yet still not really get to where we want to be. So I'm going to share with you guys an example, just examples maybe from my own life, but fundamentally, I am someone who lives my life feeling like I deserve more than what I actually have. Because I can see the amount of skill or talent that I have and what I put it into. So for example, I have this YouTube channel, right? I do nonfiction writing in a way to help people on blogs, stuff like that. I have my own website where I have my poetry, short stories, fictions, novels, things like that. Anybody can read it, of course. I've had some stuff published, but not a great amount. Some success. I also make music, things that could fit into TV shows, movies, beats that people could make, intros to YouTube channels, rappers, things like that. I also rap, right? I'm also a tour guide. So I have a career. There's a career in tourism, right? And I'm a pretty good tour guide, I think, as well, judging by all those 5-star reviews that I paid people to leave. So there's all these parts of myself that I do, and yet when I look at them and combine them all together, there's only really a few thousand people that are supporting me, a couple thousand, maybe 2, 3 max, right? And yet I see people who have less skill, less talent than I do, who have 2, 3, 4 times as many likes, followers, subscribers, an engagement level that is much higher than the one that I'm bringing in. And most of the time, these people are, they're not good. I'm not saying that just from a sense of inflated ego, a little bit maybe, but not wholly, 20% only. But the rest of me is looking at it more like, how? How is this happening? Based upon what I deserve, how is this happening, right? And you might ask yourself the same question. You might compare your life to others, right? This idea of, well, I should be farther ahead because I deserve more than what I have, right? And it's a very common theme, I think, in many people's lives, especially with things like social media, where you basically are just inundated with a shit ton of information, most of that information playing on your insecurities. And it works. And maybe that wasn't the intention of social media in the first place, but it ends up, as a consequence, making a lot of people feel rather inadequate about themselves and where they are in their own life, right? And even in spirituality, you think that at this point, you should be a peaceful individual who's completely mastered their emotions and who is not bothered or fazed by such things like traffic or not getting something that you want, or being able to let go easily and being in the moment. These are all very, very nice ideas, and yet you might find yourself still playing catch up to your own spiritual development as well. So no matter what it is, whether it's examples from my life, examples from your life, something else you might be able to think of, we always feel like we're behind, right? And when I look at these other people who I have seen their work, and most of them I think are not so good, not as good as me, right? And yet they have more engagement, they have more followers or whatever. I only really notice one key difference between myself and these other people. And what I'm noticing is the energy that they put into the things that they care about greatly outnumbers the amount of energy that I'm putting into the things that I care about. And that's the only real difference. It's not that I put in zero energy, right? Of course, I might spend an hour or two a day doing something, whether it's making a YouTube video, writing, anything like that. But my value, the energy that I'm putting into what I am saying I value, is not as much as what these people are putting into from what they're saying their value. There's a clear divide between the time, the energy that's going into these things. And it's true. Most of my time might be spent just brooding around in my room like Batman. That except without the physical prowess or technology or money or good looks. And I also don't have a butler. So really in every single way I'm nothing like Batman. I don't even have a suit. So the only real part that's the same is the brooding, the sitting in the cave alone, just thinking. I'm a really good thinker. But self-worth does not come from thinking. Self-worth comes from feeling. And you don't need to have, I should say, this high level of self-worth to be successful. There are plenty of actors and singers and successful people all around the world of varying degrees of professionalism that have a lot of money or have whatever they wanted to go after, but their self-worth isn't very high. They have self-esteem issues. They're not confident. They abuse drugs and women, maybe not physically, but I mean, sex. They abuse all kinds of stuff themselves. No, a lot of people that are successful are not happy. They don't have a high sense of self-worth. But what they did do was, of course, there could be some luck as well, right? But they banked on themselves. They put themselves into what they wanted to do. Wanting to do something is not wrong, right? Whatever it might be. You want to be a singer, you want to be an actor, you want to open up your own bakery. These ideas, these goals, these aspirations, they're all good, but they don't necessarily connect to your self-worth at all. It really just comes down to, can you be consistent? Consistency is the key. Even these YouTube videos, I put them up every so often, but never on the same day, never at the same time. How can I expect there to be a real level of consistency or engagement when I'm not even being built into the algorithm? So you have to understand that when you do things, even things that we're talking about on a more esoteric level, self-worth, self-help, becoming a better version of yourself, this idea of self-improvement, unless you have consistency, you'll never actually get what you deserve. So you can apply it to pretty much anything, things like love, things like relationships, connections, friendships, money. Unless you're willing to be consistent with the efforts that you put in on a daily basis, you're not going to feel that self-worth just suddenly arise out of nowhere. And self-worth is something that requires consistency. So while the majority of this video might be talking about a material type of success, which does require consistency, your own ability to feel good about yourself, to feel that you have a value for just being here, for just being alive, requires a certain level of consistency. Now, that consistency might look different for other people, but the point is that if you're going to choose to have some sort of spiritual development, that you want to make changes, that you want to be better, you're going to have to be willing to be consistent with yourself, right? Consistent with letting go, consistent with taking different actions, consistent with not beating yourself up, consistent with holding yourself accountable, consistent with letting yourself off the hook a little bit, right? There needs to be a consistency, whatever it might be. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's probably going to be messy, but it has to be a consistent type of messiness. How you're going to do something, how you're going to move forward has to be consistent. And it doesn't have to look like anything in particular. It has to be your thing. You have to own it. You have to make it something that you feel that you can actually do every day. And then at some point, you wake up and you realize, you know what? I have more self-worth. I'm seeing things, apparently, manifest into my existence. And they're going to tie directly to how you feel about yourself. Not everything. Material success, like I said, you can become successful overnight. You could win $10 million tomorrow. And it doesn't mean that you've gained any self-worth, right? There's a ton of things that can happen that might make you feel better, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to feel complete or you're going to feel whole within yourself. So it's one of those kinds of situations where, yes, in order to have self-worth, you need to be consistent. But being consistent with material success doesn't necessarily create self-worth. So, all the people that spend their life focusing on the outside first rather than the inside will maybe get to a point where they are financially successful or they recognize they have some level of success in their life that they wanted to, but it doesn't mean that they'll feel any better. So, if you focus on the inside first, how you work through your own life, your own internal process, if you can be consistent with that first and foremost, the rest of it will start to follow.